We are here revolutionizing news with your non-party affiliated host and an open platform of discussion. Help us grow by smashing that thumbs up button now and join the movement and hit that subscribe button. If you want to participate, put your answers to the topic questions in the comments below. And now let's hear from our guest today. David with the Democrat Party. Topic number one. Rocco with the Republican Party. Topic number one. Biden has shut down the Keystone pipeline, instituted a fracking ban on federal lands, and issued a moratorium on new gas and oil leases on U.S. land. How will this impact the economy and job growth, David?
This is going to be fantastic for the economy, for job growth, for the entire country. The jobs that these fossil fuel jobs, they've been declining for generations, and that's the only direction they're going. Green energy is the way of the future, and we will absolutely need to reach for that. The sooner we do it, the sooner we can become a global leader for this and to actually help our competitive advantage around the world and create even more jobs. So this is not just the smart thing to do for global warming and for the environment generally for future generations. From that perspective, this is economically the right thing to do.
Do you think that this is going to push those folks, not necessarily just the people that may be within those job categories, but push companies to expand jobs in renewable energies? Do you think that that's really the kick in the pants that they needed to have that massive expansion going forward?
Jobs in the renewable sector have been expanding as the cost has come down. The cost, when oil went below zero, I believe it was it might be 2 years ago now, for a brief moment, we had maybe the clearest moment of what the future really is. We know that it's renewables. Renewables have gotten cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. All of the money is going in there. You just have to look at Tesla stock to see that even Wall Street is beginning to throw everything they have at these resources because they finally hit this point where they are absolutely competitive on any sort of basis with fossil fuels. But because they're also cleaner and better for the world, we should even not just, restrict investments in fossil fuels, but also keep promoting additional investments and subsidizing investments into green energy and renewables.
So one of Fox News's headlines when this came out, this particular topic came out, David, was Joe Biden had said, find new jobs. Republicans would maybe counter back with your point, saying something along the lines of these people have been within these industries for a very long time. Now that we're looking at these fracking bans, we're looking at them changing the landscape from fossil fuels. It may be very difficult for some of those people to get new jobs. What would you say if you were talking to those individuals in those fields right now, somebody that may be watching this from Pennsylvania where fracking is big, or the coal industry where in West Virginia where that might be big, and that's something that they've known their whole life? What would you say to those voters that may potentially be looking for a different leader in the Democrat Party?
I would say they should take a very good look at the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal absolutely includes economic justice at its core. We believe an economy needs to work for all Americans, that the economy is not measured by how the stock market alone does, or how individual stocks do, or how billionaires are doing. Right? We want to make sure that there are good jobs out there for everybody. And investing in these industries, for example, West Virginia and coal, it's been demonstrated that West Virginia can generate as much electricity as it has in coal with wind. Right? But we just need to be able to invest in these industries, and the Democrats will need to be able to make that case to traditionally Republican voters in a lot of these states who are scared. And the concerns are completely legitimate. Too often, their concerns are not given enough time and substance in the platforms. And so I think 100% that they need to be brought along, they need to be brought into the fold. And I think that they'll understand, if they can look at the Green New Deal, that their future is in the Green New Deal, is in the Democratic Party, whereas sticking with the Republicans, sticking with anybody who wants to try and prop up these dying technologies that are just polluting the planet, all they're really trying to do is leave them at the bottom of a dying industry with no plan to help them out whatsoever.
Okay, so Rocco, we do have viewers that are probably feverishly writing in the comments right now their opinions on Joe Biden, closing down the Keystone pipeline, instituting a fracking ban on federal land, and getting back to the topic, issuing that moratorium on new gas and oil leases on U.S. land. So, Rocco, from the Republicans, how will this impact the economy and job growth over at least the next 4 years?
Well, I think the first thing worth pointing out here is that there are many Joe Biden supporters who this is taken by surprise, and this includes people like the governor of New Mexico, who's a Democrat. A pipe fitter union in Pennsylvania represents 11,000 members, which endorsed Joe Biden. These folks thought that the Biden administration was going to take a more moderate approach, and this was a question that we really saw play out over the course of the Democratic primary, and we saw it play out a lot within Republican circles as well, was the question of, is Joe Biden sort of playing leftist in order to try to appeal to that base and saying things that he doesn't believe, when he talked about things in the primary like banning fracking, when he talked about things like, bringing back on fossil fuels. And there were some who thought that that wasn't going to happen, that he was just trying to win a primary. Well, I think what we're finding out is that this is a real strategy that he's going with. This is a real strategy that his administration is advocating for. And frankly, this approach to American energy will put a lot of those union workers out of work. I think that it will blow a massive hole. In fact, I don't believe it. They've said in New Mexico it'll blow a massive hole in their state budget, because they rely on drilling on federal land for a large portion of their tax revenue. And that's true in a lot of southwestern states. So when you do things like you stop the Keystone pipeline, go after fracking, and you go after other methods of drilling oil and gas, these are things that even most moderates who voted for Biden didn't think he was going to do. And I think that's why they felt comfortable with him. And they're going to now, I believe, find out that it was a bad calculation on his part, because he's going to be trying to replace these jobs with green energy jobs. But, the fact of the matter is that green energy jobs, when it comes to the direct subsidies, take in just shy of $14 billion in direct energy subsidy support, according to the Energy Information Administration. So, and that's compared to just 489 million for the fossil fuels. So I think
for the viewers that are watching that don't understand what that means, can you kind of define what those subsidies mean?
Yeah, so when I say direct subsidies, I mean payments that actually go to these companies in the form of contracts, in the form of favorable tax credits, that sort of thing. Whereas with the gas companies, the oil companies, they'll say that they are getting a lot of subsidies, but typically those are industry tax credits that go to most industries, that go to manufacturing, that go to real estate, things like depreciation of your equipment, the sort of things that are more common deductibility. With things like solar, with things like wind, it actually at this point takes more energy, takes more resources to create the energy than the energy produces. And that's why you end up needing all of this government subsidy for it. And that's why you don't really have these things in areas where government isn't supporting it, where you don't have these programs. And it really begs the question, if these energy programs are so able to replace oil and natural gas, then why is it that oil and natural gas are able to function in a free market, but these other technologies are not? So I think that these are important questions in terms of the specifics of fracking, in terms of the specifics of renewables. But really the bottom line is that this is all about climate change. This whole approach to environmental regulation coming from the left is about the climate change issue. And the bottom line of our environmental regulations are they often place massive burdens on Americans while doing very little, even by the admission of the people proposing them, to substantially change the overall carbon footprint on the planet Earth. I mean, take the Paris Climate Agreement, for example. You have a proposal for a 30% reduction in our carbon emissions, while China's carbon emissions under this agreement are allowed to continue to increase until 2030, and to a point where they will build enough coal plants that they will create enough energy that could actually power all of Canada. And that will completely wipe out any gains that we create. So the purpose of this is not to save the planet, to reduce emissions, or if that is the purpose, that's not what it's going to do. Because what's happening in China, what's happening in India is going to wipe that out with ease. All this is going to do is cripple capitalism, cripple the free market, which some of us believe is the point, at least from the people at the top. I'm not saying the people in the environmental movement aren't being sincere, but I think that the people in the Biden administration, the people who are in power, understand that these things aren't going to do much in the bottom line. And it's a massive cost for not very much gain.
So for the benefit of our viewers, to keep our points concise and so they get the most out of our conversations, I'll let David respond and then give Rocco the last word. So David, how would you respond to Rocco's points?
Oh, there's a lot in there, but as far as I know, that was a completely inaccurate representation of the subsidy situation. Fossil fuels currently get over $20 billion a year, and that's a conservative estimate. Anybody watching this, just Google it for themselves.
That's globally, or that's in the United States?
United States.
Okay.
And the idea that it's constantly been a myth perpetuated by the right and by fossil fuel industries, which have been lying about the climate impact since the 70s, that somehow green energy has been the recipient of greater subsidies. No industry in the history of mankind has ever received greater subsidies than the fossil fuel industry. There is no such thing as a free market when you have a few companies that are monopolizing all of the available resources and basically buying off our government. And so we're finally at a point, though, where, simply put, it's not competitive. Like, they are not competitive in the marketplace. And to bring up China with the environment, China's been eating our lunch with respect to solar panels and a lot of green technology. And so say what you will, but if you want to actually compete for the jobs of the future and have an America that's ready to compete globally for all of the jobs that are going to be around in 20, 40, 60, 100 years, we need to make this transition. Fossil fuel jobs are the jobs of the past. It's a dying industry that's taking a lot of our planet with us. Okay, so I don't care if you think it's because of the environment or if it's because of good economics. You need to get on board with green jobs, all right? Because that is the wave of the future. Those are the good paying jobs, and those are the jobs that are going to be around. Like right now, if you could guarantee your kid a job in either a oil well, or at some sort of factory that was producing solar panels or wind turbines or something that's green technology, what would you do, right? You want your kid, hopefully, to have the job that you know is going to be around for a long time, is going to help make a more sustainable world for your child. That's what this is all about. All right. And regarding, let's also make sure that my understanding of what Biden has proposed is he's not shutting down existing fracking. He's banning like the new leases temporarily, at least. I need to go ahead and check that out. Yes. So it's not, as we're currently, looking at this, he's not going in and shutting things down. Now, are there ramifications that we need to take into account? Absolutely. But these ramifications needed to be taken into account anyway, because these are dying industries. All right. We needed to go ahead and find ways to transition these jobs into other fields, whether it be energy, like clean energy, or whether it be helping them find a completely new kind of job, right? That is a problem that's going to exist regardless of whether Republicans are in power or Democrats are in power. That's an American issue that we have to tackle, and at least the Democrats are trying to go ahead and be proactive about this.
And I've seen several comments on Twitter, and I may have retweeted them. If you want to check out my Twitter, it is linked in the description below, same as David and Rocco's. They'll be linked there as well, so you can tweet them directly. But one topic that for this particular issue, David, that is very popular, that I've been reading over and over and over again, is there's already pipelines from Canada to the United States. What makes Keystone so special? And with them canceling it, they're just going to potentially use trucks, which could potentially be much more hazardous to the environment in shipping concerns and whatnot. I mean, oil is not just gasoline. I mean, we have to recognize that a lot of plastics, medical devices, so there's a lot of uses for oil other than just oil and gas, than just gasoline. But what makes Keystone Pipeline so special that they really needed to target that in these executive orders?
Keystone Pipeline, one, from an environmental standpoint, when you're running a pipeline all the way from Canada down to the Gulf, down to Louisiana, the chances for having an inevitable burst and rupture in that pipeline over the lifetime of it is an environmental disaster simply waiting to happen. And there's absolutely no reason that that should be run. And also the tar sands that they are shipping down, the amount of energy you need to put in to refine those tar sands into actually usable petroleum is astronomical compared to, this isn't what we would call clean crude, which is easy to refine into a petroleum. So the amount of energy invested just to get a unit of energy out makes the entire process incredibly inefficient. And from an environmental standpoint, it's definitely not worth any of the risk. And I hope that they do not allow for the trucking of these same tar sands down down all the way to Louisiana, because also anybody thinking about this should be wondering, why in the world wouldn't Canada just be refining these right there? Or why wouldn't anybody be doing this somewhere else if it was really something that the people should want to do in a country? Why wouldn't this just be done there?
Excellent. Rocco, I'll let you have the last couple of minutes to respond to David's last point.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of points there, and I think that the fundamental question is, one of them at least, is of what is the energy job of the future. And my suggestion would just be that we should just let the market play out and decide what is the energy job of the future. If solar, if electric, through these batteries, I should say, if wind, if these things can do the job more cheaply, more efficiently, and for a more higher quality or similar quality experience, then people will buy them in the state of nature. You don't need to provide massive government subsidies for them. The only time you need to provide big government subsidies is when you have a situation where you can't make it work or make it competitive without that. So, if we are to say, remove all the subsidies from everybody and see who does better, I'm all for that. I don't think the green energy people are for that, because they're going to find that their jobs are not any longer sustainable. And just to be clear, as to what I was referencing earlier, this was from the Institute for Energy Research. There's been $100 billion in subsidies given to wind, solar, nuclear combined. And when you combine that with the energy subsidies given per megawatt hour of electricity generated by natural gas, oil, and coal, it's about 64 cents per megawatt hour for natural gas, oil, coal. It's about $56 for wind and $775 for solar. And this is the Institute for Energy Research. I don't know what their lean is, and obviously I didn't take a huge look into the study, but there are sources on this where you can find that the subsidies are massive for this sector, pretty much regardless of where you are. So I think that the real point is that if we are going to have a question of what are the energy jobs of the future, we should play that out without any interference from the outside, because the future of our economy depends on it. I mean, there are 10 million jobs in oil and natural gas in this country. And if we are going to say that these can be replaced with renewables, with wind, with solar, with these other alternatives, then we should at least have it demonstrated that those can stand on their own 2 feet. And I would love to see a world, to be clear, where Elon Musk has a battery breakthrough which allows all of us to drive for 1,000 miles on a charge, and we can all, have a very good experience, and it would be better than cars. And I would agree that in such a situation, the batteries would be superior, but we're just not there yet. And in the absence of being there, in the absence of a concrete plan to get there, I don't see throwing away 5% of the jobs in the United States or putting them at risk as being viable. And I just have one last point on the matter of fracking, which is that David is correct, of course, that they just put a 60-day moratorium on new leases, and They didn't stop any of the old leases, but the point is that these leases do have, like an apartment lease, like any lease, a time frame. And if they expire and are not renewed, then that will create a severe economic backlash. And even just the moratorium on the new leases for the next couple of months creates all sorts of economic uncertainty, which you're seeing play out in the oil sector of the stock market right now. And is creating a situation where people are, in great fear for their jobs during a time where we've already gone through a whole year of that. So I think that Joe Biden needs to be more sensitive to the economic situation, more sensitive to the reality of what a large role this sector plays in our economy, and back off of the targeting of fossil fuels to the extent that he is.
Excellent. Well, we appreciate both of our guests coming on today, and you, the viewer, thank you so much for joining us. Hit us up in the comment section. Check us out on Twitter. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys. Thanks.